So far in 2017, the S&P 500 index is up just under 7%, but the price of gold and silver are up about 7.5%. Now, despite the fact that both precious metals and the U.S. stock market have performed about the same thus far in 2017, Americans are rushing to buy U.S. stocks, yet they're completely ignoring precious metals. And this despite the fact that the Dow Jones or the S&P 500 is at an all-time record high, and the valuations are clearly in bubble territory. Yet when it comes to gold and silver, even though they're doing well this year, gold prices are about 30% below their peak price in 2011, and silver is better than 60% below its peak price. So despite the fact that gold and silver are outperforming the S&P this year, and despite the fact that they have a much further way to go to get back to their highs, and the fact that the U.S. stock market is not only at record highs but in bubble territory, what explains the fact that so few people are buying gold? As a matter of fact, Schiff gold has been around since 2010, and the first quarter of this year was not only the weakest first quarter we've had, but the weakest quarter we've had in the short history of my company. And it's not just that we're doing something wrong at Schiff Gold. In fact, our wholesalers are telling us that we're actually doing better than most of our competitors, that we're actually gaining share in this shrinking market. And in fact, if you look at the government statistics for sales of U.S. minted coins, this is the lowest they've been of the entire bull market. I mean, you can go back to 1999, 2000 and look at quarterly sales from the U.S. Mint, and they've never been this low. But it's not Americans. The rest of the world are still buying gold. Gold is still being purchased. After all, the price of gold is rising. It's had a very strong start so far to 2017. The world is buying gold. It's just that Americans are not. And so why is the world still bullish, yet Americans are bearish? And the only real reason I can come up with is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's election as president, for a lot of people, is a game changer. Think about the typical American buyer of gold. Who is he? I mean, I know a lot about American gold buyers because I've been selling them gold for many years. And most of them are Republicans. They believe in small government. They're worried about excessive government. They're worried about central bankers. They've been worried about Alan Greenspan and then Ben Bernanke and now Janet Yellen. They didn't like the direction the country was going in. They didn't like the growth of government. They didn't like the growth of debt. They were worried about the future of the country. They were worried about inflation. And so they were buying gold to protect themselves and to hedge against inflation. Well, once Donald Trump was elected, for a lot of gold customers, all that changed. They all of a sudden went from being pessimistic to being optimistic. All of a sudden, Donald Trump was going to make America great again. He was going to fix all the problems that gold buyers correctly perceived existed in the country. So people were buying gold for 8 years because of Obama, and they were buying even more gold when it looked like Hillary Clinton would carry on the traditions. But when they were pleasantly surprised by the election of Donald Trump, all of a sudden, the typical American gold buyer started to buy U.S. stocks. They no longer were worried about any of the problems because they believed that Trump was going to fix them, that Trump was a real game changer. And since they were no longer pessimistic on the economy, no longer worried about the dollar or inflation, they stopped buying gold. But I'm recording this video today to let people know that nothing has changed. Yes, having Donald Trump president is better than having Hillary Clinton as president, but he is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for the economy. If you were worried about the damage that Barack Obama was going to do to this country, believe me, he did it. He was president for 8 years, and he did a lot of damage. The problem is the damage is going to hit on Donald Trump's watch. Barack Obama got out of Dodge just in time, but everything is going to come down around Donald Trump. He has inherited this disaster, and there's nothing he can do to divert it. More importantly, it's not even what Barack Obama did, but what Janet Yellen did, and what Ben Bernanke did, and what Alan Greenspan did. And Janet Yellen is still chairing the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve continues to make the same mistakes under Trump that it made under Obama. So the problems haven't been solved. The problems are only getting worse. And the reality is, even if Donald Trump manages to get his agenda through Congress, it is not the type of agenda that's going to make America great again. It is not going to solve our problems. Donald Trump is talking about borrowing a page from FDR's playbook. He's talking about Keynesian-style pump priming. What Donald Trump wants to do is replace taxation with inflation. He wants to continue to allow government spending to increase, maybe making some superficial cuts here or there, but not actually making any substantive cuts to runaway entitlement spending. So he wants to allow government to continue to grow. At the same time, he wants to deprive government of tax revenue by reducing taxes. And so if government gets bigger, but tax revenue gets smaller, how do we pay for all this government? There's only one source of funding, and that's the Federal Reserve. So if you thought QE 1, 2, and 3 were bad, wait till you get a load of QE 4. We're going to have to print a lot more money under President Trump than we printed under President Obama. And we are still headed for a currency crisis. We're still headed for a sovereign debt crisis. All of the problems that you believed existed and that caused you to buy gold while Obama was president, all of those problems are bigger now that Donald Trump is president. And here's an even scarier thought, and this is something that you need to be prepared for. If I'm right and the Obama bubble bursts on Donald Trump, there's going to be a lot of disillusioned voters. There's going to be a lot of voters who are going to blame it on Donald Trump. And the media is going to help voters come to that conclusion. After all, the media was convinced that Barack Obama turned over a pristine economy to Donald Trump. Everything was great. And then you know what? A Republican takes over and we go back to the same old failed policies of George Bush, and now all of a sudden we're right back in a crisis. You know how they're going to spin this. They're going to say, you know, this proves once and for all, not that we needed any more proof, but that capitalism doesn't work, that deregulation doesn't work, that tax cuts don't work, and we could end up in 2020 with an even worse president than what Hillary Clinton would have been. Even a bigger spender, a bigger government, maybe even somebody further to the left than Bernie Sanders. You know, a lot of people want to compare Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan. Well, you know, I think there's a greater chance that he's not the next Ronald Reagan, that he is the next Jimmy Carter, only the politics are reversed. Why was Jimmy Carter elected president? Because the economy was a mess following 8 years of Nixon and Ford, because of the monetary policies, and these were, you know, liberal Republicans, these were rhinos, these were Rockefeller Republicans, and the country was in trouble, and so they went to Jimmy Carter, an outsider, a peanut farmer. Maybe they'd give him a chance to turn everything around, and he didn't turn anything around. It got worse, and then we had a big shift back to the right, and we went back for 8 years of Ronald Reagan and then 4 years of Bush before the country went left again with Bill Clinton. Well, this time we had 8 years of Barack Obama, and despite all the hoopla in the media and the Federal Reserve and Wall Street, the economy got worse, and the average voter understood how bad the economy was, and they decided to give Donald Trump and the Republicans a chance. Well, when this bubble blows up on Trump's watch, and instead of a quick fix and you know, America getting greater and us being sick of winning so many times because, you know, or wanting to lose because we win all the time, when Americans end up being big losers, when the dollar collapses and inflation runs out of control and the unemployment rate picks up and the misery index goes up again, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame Trump, they're going to blame the Republicans, and we're going to go right back hard left to a big spending Democrat, and we could be stuck with the Democrats for another 4 or 8 years. And believe me, you don't want to wait till then to start loading up on gold and silver again, because believe me, you're not going to be able to buy gold for under $1,300 or buy silver for under 18 bucks if all this stuff happens. So what you want to do is start anticipating all of these problems, start anticipating the future instead of being surprised by it. Don't be lulled into a false sense of complacency. Look, you can hope for the best. Maybe I'm wrong, but you better plan for the worst and you better buy some gold. And probably the only thing better than buying gold is buying silver.